Hello, this is Debbie, and this is Light Up Your Worth. I can't tell you how many excited and explanation points I have for today's guest. I have with me Pat Waite. And Pat Waite, I'm going to get into his bio, but I want you guys to know he was a pivotal person in my career, which became my life. You've heard me talk about that 1% shift in your life, and you can become, change the whole direction of your trajectory onto a new continent. Well, this was probably 1 to 2%, and it really has made a major impact. So we're going to get into that in this interview because I'm going to embarrass him first. But, Pat is from has been married for 34 years, if that isn't a testimony of a man of integrity. And he lives in my hometown of San Jose, California since 1984. And he has 4 beautiful grandchildren. He has an MBA from Willamette University, graduating with the highest honors, and he's currently on the university's board of trustees and a vice president of their financial affairs committee. He had a 20-year plus professional career in finance, accumulating as the vice president of finance for Seagate Technology, where he was my vice president. So he has over 30 years of continuous community services in executive and leadership positions. And so he's very passionate about streamlining operations and public safety. And he's just a very, outstanding person to actually have in your life. And we're lucky to have you, Pat. So welcome.
Thank you very much. That was almost embarrassing.
Yeah. I know you have to look back going, wow, did I do all that?
Yeah,
I
I don't
know.
know. I had a good writer for that, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you're all of that. I mean, I probably would have stayed a half an hour reading all of the places that you've done so much community service in my hometown, which I greatly appreciate. So,
Well, thank you.
so I am I asked you to come on because I've been we recently hit over 100 episodes on the podcast of Light Up Your Worth. And I've just have seen this enormous amount of personal growth in myself and my own leadership. And I share that, with and throughout the episodes. But what it really triggered in me was to go back in a moment in time of where I've had this level of growth. And growth isn't always easy. It's you fall down a lot, you pick yourself back up. And when I started to reflect back on that, I thought about one of the biggest things that impacted my life was when I worked for you. And at that time, just to paint a picture for the audience, was that I was ending a 21 extremely dysfunctional, borderline, you could read into that, and had a 10 and 11-year-old son. He was about that age. So I was a single mom, and we were never married. And I was working at Seagate, and I was a finance manager. And I think I had about 15 people working for me about the time, right around that time. And Pat Wade, I was working in finance, a sales and a marketing role. And Pat picked me up and he put me in this thing called Six Sigma Black Belt training. I hadn't even heard of Six Sigma Black Belt training. And so for those in the audience who are like, well, I don't even know what that is, it's a scientific approach through problem solving. A lot of stats. I'm not a statistician. And so you picked me up, and it was brand new in our transactional world. And I had no idea what I'd gotten myself into. I just knew that if Pat wanted me to go do something, oh, that sounds like fun. Sure, I'll go do that to help my group, because things were manual, back then. This is like 2001. And so the
Yeah,
world looked
I
a lot
remember that.
different. Hmm.
You did struggle with the math part of that. I do recall that.
Oh, yes. And my cohort that I was with had our CFO in it, who was who was a statistician.
Right.
And he was watching me.
Well, better watching you than
Uh,
watching me.
yeah, he's probably watching you going, why'd you put this, I mean, and just to set the environment, there was like 30, 35 of us. There was 4 women in this group. I was the only one under 50, and I'm surrounded by engineers who know this stuff. This is what they do. And so I'm in this class way intimidated by, you know, where I was. And then I would go to a class, come back and talk to you about what I was doing and feel like I
Right.
was on the verge of falling apart. Like I think I did fall apart actually, but
You did. That's okay. We put you back together.
and it was really, even before leading into that is that it was the first time I'd ever really seen what people now call servant leadership. I don't I just I didn't know what to call it back then, but I had never experienced that in my life. That somebody had that level of belief and that I could do something and I didn't think I could.
Well, I
And
wouldn't have put you out there if you couldn't.
yeah.
I mean,
And
it's
uh-huh.
I've been doing that for I was doing that for a long time even before I met you. I lived in Colorado for a while and was a pretty decent skier, and I'd go skiing with friends, and they'd ask me if I could help them get better, and I'm like, okay, let's ski your favorite run, and they'd take me on it, and then I'd say, okay, let's go try this run, and they'd stand at the top, and 201, they'd look down, and they'd say, I can't ski this run, and I'm like, I wouldn't put you on a run you couldn't ski. Why can't you ski this run? And they'd say, well, I'm going to fall down. And I'm like, so you fall down. If you're not falling down, you're not trying hard. And I took that philosophy into the business world too. It's okay to make mistakes. And once you get over the fear of making mistakes, you have like no limits. So you
Yeah,
got over that fear.
I did because I failed. Like I failed that training. I had to go over to Milpitas, you know, and I I failed. Like and I came back and you asked me, "What did you learn?"
I think what I specifically asked you is, what are you going to do different next time?
Yes.
Because you had trouble with a project, if I recall correctly.
Mhm. Yep.
And we sat down and reviewed it. You were like terrified that it had gone so poorly. And that's the question I ask you. What are you going to do different next time?
Mhm.
Because there's always a next time, right?
Yep. There was, in fact, because I think it was only a couple months from then, and you're like, "Well, I think I'm gonna send you out to Minnesota so you're not distracted,
Right.
and you figure out how you're gonna get everything done, who's gonna do what." And I had never even experienced where I could learn how to delegate.
That's the mark of a good manager.
And what I find so incredible about that whole experience, so just so the listeners knows, I rocked that training. I won the biggest awards that they could give out in, the whole cohort. Same environment, 4 women, and, I got multiple accolades, and the 2 master black belts became lifelong friends. Um, rest in peace, Paul, and, um, really made an impact, just to be able to go and have that freedom and not have that fear of the failure, which is so typical of managers that I had experienced, of that fear-based mentality of failure.
Well, that's a fallback uh, method for many managers because it's easy, right? And it's real simple to terrorize employees into being productive, and that works for short periods of time, but it wears them out, it burns them out, and then they turn over, and you got to do it all over again. I've found it's much, much more effective to find what they're good at and help them excel at that as opposed to trying to force them to do something they're not good at. Much more productive and much
Yeah.
more effective. And you end up with a much stronger organization with everybody doing what they're best at. And the manager's job is to help them discover that, to help them succeed at it, and help them to be excellent at it. It's more work, but in the long run, it's much more effective and much more productive and much more fulfilling.
Hmm. I would agree. It's much more fulfilling. And it actually is what gave my first intro into coaching. That now, 20 years later, I still do the scientific problem solving. Actually, I do Lean Six Sigma, and I'm considered the expert. And
Good.
I didn't have an expertise back then. I was a generalist. And nobody had actually ever told me that. You told me that. So it's like, well, what do you want to go learn? Like these conversations, it always amazes me that I can remember them myself because so much life has happened. But um, so where did you learn this value of really of, being more of service and pulling out the best in people?
Oh man, I don't know. It's just you treat people the way you want to be treated, right? And I learned from my parents a high degree of independence. I mean, for starters, I was the oldest of five, so I was left on my own a lot, so that they could ride herd on the other three or four, depending upon how far down the line. So I grew up independent, um, and I grew up. Well, I also grew up with a little bit of Catholic education, like fourth and fifth grade. So there is that whole kind of religious undertone of do unto others. Before they do unto you, I think is how it used to go. But treat people the way you would like to be treated. And I really enjoyed my freedom, and I really enjoyed being able to go do things with relatively little oversight. And I truly believe that most people are happier in that kind of environment as well. So what I would tell my bosses, and when I changed jobs, which happened more frequently than I care to admit during my career, is tell me what you want done, tell me what I'm not allowed to do to accomplish that, and then get out of my way and let me go do it. And so by and large, they did. And I like to treat my employees that way too, because it allows me to delegate. It allows manager to delegate. If you set the boundaries and turn them loose, you don't have to go do the work. So that's just that's just the way I ended up managing. I didn't really think about it. It just kind of happened.
Hmm. Yeah, it really was quite, you know, I think it was just such the understanding the importance of your words and how you would frame something. Used to have this weekly staff meeting, I think on Mondays, and I'm not a morning person, right? And I didn't live close by. And this is before telecommuting even came in. And
Right.
and I couldn't make it to the staff meeting on time. And instead of being, talked to like I'm five, like get it together, Deb, you know, um, you well, maybe you need to call in, or I mean, how do like you offered options so that in a time when this isn't like the pandemic days where we're all on Zoom calls. This was, we technology was not what it is today. And so there was a lot less options and nobody was really working from home.
Well,
And you just provided options so that I could still be successful.
and that's key. I mean, lazy managers treat employees as resources, right? They're tools to get a job done, and they treat them like a mechanic treats his wrench. They'll take good care of it, keep it clean and oiled, but in the end, it's just there to help them screw the nuts down, technically
Hmm.
tighten the nuts down. Um, but employees are people, and that's more important than being a resource, because you have to treat them like they're people, like they have value, like they have dreams and aspirations, in order for them to be as successful as possible. And that's what the role of a leader is. It's not to manage resources, it's to help people grow and become more productive and be the best person that they're capable of being. And that's what I think I tried to do as a manager throughout my career, was
Hmm.
to help people find out what they're good at and put them where they can be the best at that. And sometimes it wasn't in the same organization, sometimes it wasn't even in the same company, but they were always happy and satisfied when they ended up where they did, almost to a person. They would track me down and say, "It scared the hell out of me. You wanted me to go do this, but I'm really glad you did."
Hmm. Yeah, you were having people look for their why before Simon Sinek was even around, right?
Look
Like
for the
before it was definitely well known, or
well,
he's
it's just it's part of treating your employees as people, and I think that managers forget about that. I mean, for instance, you probably remember I used to on payday when because they still gave out paper stubs when we were
yeah.
working at Seagate. I would if I was in town, which wasn't terribly often, but when I was, I would get the pay stubs and walk around the campus handing the paychecks out to
Mhm.
the employees, my employees anyway, because it gave me an opportunity to thank them for the work that they were doing. They earned their paycheck, and I needed to show that it was truly appreciated what they were doing. And I got feedback through your group, I think, because you sat with the accounting group at the time, that
Mhm.
they were kind of frustrated that their boss wasn't doing that. They're like, how come he
Yeah.
treats you like that and my boss doesn't?
Yeah.
It's because it makes a difference.
Mhm. Yeah, it really gave me the freedom as, leading my own team to really lean into their strengths. It allowed me to put them where they would flourish. It's like the Strength Finder book now, right? Like you could have wrote that book, Pat, about, putting people in their strengths. So how how did you see people's strengths? How did, you know, the superhuman power that you had of knowing where we would all do well? I mean, it's quite astonishing.
Well, thanks. I have no clue. I wish I could say I had some magic 8 ball or something that helped me out, but it was just, I mean, a lot of it was instinct. Um, when I worked at Unisys early on, I had this great HR manager who was astonished at the productivity I got out of my people and how good I was at managing folks. And he said, "Pat, you really should write a book about your management style and how you manage people, because you're one of the best people managers I've ever worked with." And I looked at him, I said, "Paul, I'm just making this up as I go along. Why don't you follow me around for a while and you can write the book? Just put my name on it." It's just, I don't know, because it was innate. It was innate. And it boiled down to treating people with the same respect that you would like to be treated. You don't yell at them. You don't ask them to do abominable things. You help them. I was a shift manager at, I guess it would be called fast casual restaurant now in Boulder, Colorado, when I was in college. And one of the things, one of my credos was I would never ask the workers there to do anything that I hadn't done myself, with one exception, and that was if somebody had over imbibed on 3-2 beer at the place. I wasn't going to clean up the mess in the bathroom. But other than that, everything that I asked them to do, I had done. So I knew what I was asking of them. I knew how it should be done, and I could help them do it correctly as needed. That's not, I mean, that's a long winded way of saying I don't know what the hell I was doing, Deb. I just, I wanted people to be successful and I wanted people to be happy with what they were doing. And I'd try and find the places where they could be happy doing what they were best at
Mhm. I think it is that you actually paid attention. Like,
doing.
you paid attention. Yeah, right? Yeah, you're a joker.
What?
Can you imagine our staff meetings, guys? No. It
Oh,
was
I still do that.
yeah. on a Monday at 8 o'clock in the morning. Oh my
Yep.
gosh. When you're
Get
getting
ready
off
for the week.
an elementary school kid who does not want to go to school,
Right.
right? And and his life is in a little bit of turmoil with his parents, his relationship dissolving. So it was really a good time at my household. And but you paid attention to um a lot of small things that were important to us.
That's the OCD in me.
Oh, or CDO.
Yeah, whatever it is. I was a big fan of Myers-Briggs type indicators when
Hmm.
I was managing. I think we may have gone through it
Actually, we did. Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you took us off site, beautiful.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
so that may be the one I'm thinking of. So one of the sessions, because I went through 4 or 5 or 6 of them. One of the sessions, the facilitator put up a picture of a Vienna street scene, I think, as the first thing, and said, "Okay, I'm going to put it up for whatever it was, 3 to 5 minutes, and then I'm going to ask you some questions about it afterwards. We'll have a Q&A about it." So she did, and I sat there, and uh, we got to the Q&A, and she had asked questions, we'd answer, ask questions, we'd answer. She said, and then she got to the end, she said, "Okay, what didn't we talk about there, and what did you notice that we haven't touched on?" And I said, "There were 132 people in that picture," or some number like that. She said, "How did you know that?" I said, "Well, I got bored and started counting." So I mean, it's you pay attention to the small stuff,
Hmm.
uh, to keep your brain engaged, right? I think that's what it's all about. And you never know when some little thing is going to make a big difference in your decision making or in your ability to help somebody excel.
Yeah. Wow. I don't remember the counting. Maybe it was one of the other things, but I remember I was able to take that role from just being a straight finance manager supporting sales and marketing and really create a huge partnership with that team, the sales and marketing team. I
Right.
started going to their staff meetings. I started to integrating. I was able to start asking more curious questions, about why we're doing this and what's the impact. And like my role went from this little box into this huge box.
Well, that was the whole process improvement thing, right? I mean,
Hmm.
one of the challenges I threw at you that you stepped up and did very well on was reduce the processing time on the distribution program uh, submissions. Because and I get the numbers wrong because it's so long ago, but I was taking 3 or 4 weeks to process the distribution reimbursement requests, I guess is how I'd put it. And I think I told you I wanted it down to 5 days or 3 days or some ridiculously fast turnaround time, because it would free up time for your group to do other things and improve the relationship with the distributors, which was always uh, hit and miss at Seagate. That I think that uh, was a process improvement thing. That was the first process improvement project that you actually successfully completed, I would suspect.
Hmm.
And it was before I threw you into the wolves at Six Sigma. But it's kind of how I knew that you'd be able to survive that,
Hmm.
because you'd been through it. And you did a good job of it, and you went through the usual, "This isn't possible. We can't do this," to, "Oh wow, look, we did do it, and what a wonderful thing it turned out to
Yeah. One of the stories that I've repeated in this world when I've gone to do training is that I've sat in their seats where, your staff people, at the time, my staff people were having tremendous amount of personal issues coming up because I was asking them to work more than their hours, right? Like the stress that we were under to for turnaround time. The interesting thing about it, I don't know if it's so funny, is that I now help. I'm like the expert on, having people see how to reduce their cycle times, turnaround times without increasing staff, right? With and these days, being in healthcare, is that it's not so much that there's reductions, it's just that there's simply not enough people.
Right.
And so you have to figure things out, and then knowing when to actually improve a process or completely redesign. Like, there's got to be a better way. This is
Or
out to date.
stop doing it. I mean,
Exactly.
there's
Yes.
a lot of inertia in the business world where things are done because they've always been
Hmm.
done. And even though they don't add value to the business proposition. And one of the key things to process improvement, because that's a real easy, low hanging fruit kind of thing, is to find those processes and say, well, let's stop doing them. What happens if we stop doing them? And who's going to be affected if we stop doing them? A lot of times people are concerned about stopping those processes because they think that that's their job, that's their reason for being at the company. They can't think outside that little box that they've put themselves in. And your role as a manager in that case is to help them understand that there's much more that they're capable of doing. And the only way they'll get that opportunity is to stop doing the low value added things and to focus on the things that are really going to add value to the operations.
Hmm. And that's exactly, like, I couldn't have said it better, of how when somebody takes what you're just saying, even in a business context, and they apply it to their own life, their own leadership, their own self-leadership. Like, before we got on, my whole life I've been late. Like, I was nicknamed, all kinds of things. In fact, when I was a senior in high school, my civics teacher, first grade, said, you had an A, but every like 15 late, I had to dock like half of your grade. So I got like a C, which couldn't go lower than a C. Otherwise, you can't graduate in California, at least back then.
Right.
And um, so it was something I always struggled with. And um, you were actually the leader who got through, of being that, like, the staff meeting example of, showing up. It really isn't about you. It's about the respect that you're showing the other
Correct.
person, like, just reframing it. And I think what's so important is that in the podcast, I talk frequently about, when we step into our own value and we go into those uncomfortable zones. You demonstrated that in this business environment of allowing people to step through that, and really gave them like this safe container, not just myself, but there's a whole, group of people that could be behind me, who, I was then able to influence, and those that you also directly influenced, where, you know, when you're in that vulnerable place of stepping into something uncomfortable.
It's scary. Well, and that's, the, the probably the second biggest fear that people have, the first one being fear of public singing, is fear of failure, and especially fear of public failure. But, I go back to my skiing example. If you're not falling down, you're not trying hard.
Mhm.
If you're able to do 100% perfect work on everything you're working on, you're taking it too easy on yourself. And you need to get beyond that and be willing to fall, be willing to fail at something, because that's how you learn. You're not learning if you're just doing the same thing over and over and over.
Mhm.
So, you know, to lead yourself, you need to encourage yourself to go do. To lead other people, you need to encourage them to go do that, but make it safe for them to go. That's one story that I remember from a Wall Street Journal article, and it's probably now 25 or 30 years ago. It was about an executive at IBM. He made a decision that was wrong, and it cost his division $10 million. A lot of money back then,
Mhm.
even for IBM. And he got called into his boss's office, and he's like, "Oh, shoot, this is it. I'm toast. It's been nice working for IBM." And his boss has a conversation. What would you do different? What went wrong? How would you do it better next time? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, thank you. Get back to work. And the guy says, "What? Get back to work?" He goes, "Yeah, get back to work." He says, aren't you going to fire me? And his boss looks at him and says, why would I fire you? I just spent $10 million educating you. It's that kind of attitude that people need to get comfortable with. And it's hard, even for yourself, to be comfortable failing, because it's a blow to your ego. Maybe you look bad in front of your wife or your significant other or your kids. I've fallen down standing outside the lift line skiing with my kids in front of me, and they thought it was the funniest thing they'd ever seen. Oh, well, such is life. It's true for yourself. It's true for your coworkers. It's true for your employees. It needs to be okay to fail.
Yeah. And I really think a lot of us, struggle with that. I mean, I think the biggest failure I ever had was not passing that Six Sigma black belt. I mean, I think I just bought my first home back then. I bought a condo in South San Jose
Yeah,
all by myself, single mom, going to school at night, adding this on, and I had never failed like that.
right.
Besides the relationship,
And that
but
wasn't a big failure.
huh?
That wasn't
Oh,
even a big failure. I mean, to you it was,
oh, it was
but
huge.
right. But in the grand scheme of things,
Mhm.
it was a little thing.
Yeah,
Right?
it's
Didn't cost the
mhm,
company money. It didn't, I mean, other than some of the salary stuff, but it wasn't going to affect our bottom line, and it wasn't going to affect anybody's opinion of anything except you of yourself.
mhm.
But you were scared of that, and we got you through it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It,
And you're
mhm.
better for it.
Yeah, it really influenced me and how I was able to approach, because I ended up leaving Seagate, finishing up my degree after 15 years on my bachelor's, right?
Yeah,
And then
congratulations, by
I
the way.
thank you. I know I even have a master's degree now.
I
Isn't
know.
that like
It's awesome.
that's
Who'd have
so
thunk?
I would have never thought, right? Like, and you live in my hometown. If you went down a couple blocks, you'll see where I lived. And we
Yep,
just, nobody went to school back then. It was not fancy the way it is now. And, people would pull out guns at school when I was in school, like
right.
it was, it was kind of scary.
Were you at
And
Silver Creek, or
yeah, I went to Silver Creek High School.
it's a
And
totally different place now?
yeah, right. Like, looks like a college versus what we grew up with.
Almost, yeah.
Yeah, it's just beautiful. And what was I going to say? So when I came back to the Bay Area after going out to Colorado for a couple years to finish up my education, is that I was able to come on to the same industry. I worked at Hitachi, and then, they invested me into like a $20,000 program to learn lean to continue on the process improvement, performance improvement world. And I ended up in 4 months, I was running their global program, traveling, spent so much time in Asia and, you know, got to walk around Hong Kong by myself, fearless, scuba diving in Thailand, riding elephants. I mean, I allowed myself one day of fun and I would be there for like 3 weeks at a time. And I mean, I stayed at places that and had experiences, used my miles to go to Europe with, with my friend Samantha, who worked with us.
Right.
And I mean, it really changed like who I was exposed to. Like my whole life changed. And when you go back, count like Steve Jobs says, when you count the dots backwards, that pivotal moment in time of being walked through something that was so terrifying. And I didn't think I was smart enough because it's freaking hard work to become uh whew, I still don't know how I did it. I'm in Minitab this week and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, how did I
Is that
used to do
still a
this?"
thing?
Right? It's
Holy
still a
crap.
thing. Yeah.
Wow. That was new in 1983 when I was in graduate school.
Oh,
That just came out in 1983, and I got to play around with it for a while back then. Then Lotus 123 came out. That kind of killed my work on Minitab.
yeah. And it's still around. You should see. It's actually really good now. It's
Yeah,
even better.
I bet.
But it's still, you have to actually understand all those concepts to be able to do it.
Look at you.
Mhm. Yeah,
Look
but
at you. You got it all figured out.
I did, but now I'm definitely not a statistician. That is definitely not my strength. I always
No,
know an MBB. Um,
but
but
you know enough to be dangerous
I know
and to
who to
know what you don't
call,
know.
right?
Right.
I know to ask for help on certain things and
That's the
to
other
rely
scary
upon
thing.
people's strength, right?
A lot of people are scared to ask either for help or for information
Mhm.
because they think they're going to look dumb, look uninformed. Look, I know people who won't ask for a three-letter acronym. People spout them like nobody's business. The audience will sit there and nod. And, yeah, okay, got it. Then you ask them, "What was all that?" I have no clue. Why don't you ask them? And then sometimes you ask them and they don't know what they're talking about with their three-letter acronyms, or as I like to refer to them, TLAs. And they're slinging the lingo without understanding what it is. And people are too shy. I don't use the word scared, but too afraid to ask what that three-letter acronym is, or what that
Mhm.
acronym is, or what that word means. And it puts you at a disadvantage. You absolutely have to be brave enough to ask when you don't understand something. Because number one, if you don't ask, you're misleading the person that's talking into believing that they're able to impart that information to you when in fact they're not. And two, it prevents you from contributing as much as possible because you don't understand what might be asked to do. So we got to get beyond the fear of failure and the fear of asking so
Mhm.
that we can be the best person we're capable of being in whatever environment.
Yeah. Now, if somebody's, what guidance would you provide if somebody is thinking about doing something new or, out of their comfort zone and stepping into the unknown?
Well, I think the first thing I do is find somebody you respect who knows that part of what you want to go do and have a long chat with them. Find out what they think. Ask them what's important. I mean, you do some research before you go step off the deep end. And see if you think that's still something you might like to do or try, and B, do you think you have the capabilities to do does your area of expertise align with that you want to try? And if it doesn't, if you're close, are there things you can do to fill the gaps so
Mhm.
that you have a higher probability of success? And then go do it. Don't be afraid. It's just try it. And if you fail, okay, no big deal. I mean, you might be embarrassed, but that's okay. I've been embarrassed many times, but usually I'm too oblivious to know it. Somebody has to tell me. Um, and just do it because that's what makes life exciting.
Mhm.
New things are always a lot of fun, even though they're always pretty scary too, but they're always a lot of fun. And then when you actually accomplish it, how did you feel? Yeah, when you succeeded at Six Sigma.
Oh my gosh. Well, when I went back to Minnesota, right, for those 4 weeks, they got to know me because I would talk to the hotel staff. And when I checked in the last week, they upgraded me to a suite. And, I entertained people after the after graduation party, but I was just like so lit up. It really like took my own confidence. Like it reinstated that, you're kind of smart
Yeah,
and you got your team where most people couldn't go. So lean into it's okay that I'm not the expert in being a statistician. I know who to call
right,
and what can I do to help them
correct.
get their teams. So it really got me to see my own strengths and just begin that self-acceptance journey that it kind of took it to the next level of okay, you can do hard things long before Renee Brown was around. or Glenna Doyle was around saying that we could do hard things. And it gave me it gave me the confidence because I had so much respect and continue to have so much respect for you. Um, and in, and to stay in my own integrity of belief. And now I've been told my superpower is to actually see that in others.
Well,
And,
that's good.
I think I feel now at this point in my life, in my fifth decade, is that part of my role, and it has been my role, is to reach back and help somebody else up.
Right. Well, you've been through it. And that's really important to your ability to help others go through it, right? You went through it, you were scared, you failed, you picked yourself up, you dusted yourself off, and then you succeeded. And the feeling that you get from that, if you could bottle that and pull it out every time that you're concerned about trying something new, and just open that bottle up and say, oh yeah, that's a feeling I want to experience again.
Mhm.
I think that is one of the most powerful things you can do for yourself.
Yeah, I would agree. And I'll add to the question I asked you about what guidance is, that I didn't do that alone. I had support of somebody who actually believed in me. And whether you call it mentorship or leadership or coaching or
Or
all of the
friendship.
above, or friendship, like, you actually cared that I was going to do this, and being authentic to who you were in your role, and that impact was super, it just has had this ripple effect. And I think it's important for people to realize the impact, so, I think it's important that, Pat, the impact that you had in your career, not just on me, but everybody who was under me at that point in time, and everywhere I've been now in the last 21 years, that ripple effect of all hundreds of people have been, if not 1,000 or two, have
A
been
pebble in the
impacted.
pond.
Yeah. You
Right.
you were you were the person putting that pebble and then making sure that it was that, I didn't sink, right? That I that I did,
Yeah.
because I
I mean, it's
probably came
interesting.
pretty close. Uh-huh.
I always wondered, my dad, who was CFO at Seagate for quite a few years, I think you were there when he was CFO.
Mhm.
I was always amazed at the number of friends that he had from his old jobs, because he ran through a fair number of jobs through his career before he got to Seagate. I mean, he was at Arthur Anderson for a while in Kansas City. He was with Bell and Howell for a while in Chicago. He was with Fedder's Air Conditioning in New Jersey. He was with Memorex, he was with Measurex, with Osborne Computers, all before landing at Seagate. And gatherings at his house, there'd be people from all of those various jobs. And I'm like, how do you keep those people connected? And the answer is, they wanted to be connected because they had this great respect for each other, and they could rely on each other for advice and whatnot. And I somehow have managed to amass that same kind of group in all the companies I've been with. I can name at least one or two per the people from each of the companies I was with that I see, maybe not quarterly, but annually, that I can reach out to when I need a favor, or if I need some information, or if I need help on something, because we care about each other. And that's the most important thing. I mean, I go back to my comment about employees as people rather than resources. I mean, when you put it that way, you really have to care about your people, and care about their successes, and care about their dreams and their aspirations, because that's how you'd want to be treated. And it always comes back to that. How would you like to be treated? And treat your people that way. Treat your friends that way. Treat your family that way. My grandkids are young. They're like 9, 6, 4, and 2 or something. And I joke around with them all the time because I like to be joked around with. And they get a kick out of it. The old high five. Oh, you missed. Right. Even that, you'd be amazed at what a 2-year-old, how funny a 2-year-old thinks that is. And just little things like that. But it's true at the workplace too, right? I kept toys in my office
Mhm.
because staff would bring their kids in, and when their kids came in, if they ended up in my office, they had something to play with, and they were tickled to death. And their parents thought that was a great thing. So, that's the whole take care of people. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. It's makes, people think who are listening, like, what's the legacy you're leaving? Are
Hell if I,
you, yeah.
hell if I know.
But you've left a legacy.
I,
Yeah.
if you insist.
Yeah, I do.
Well, you're part of it, I guess. And there's many others. I mean, Diane Boudreau,
Mhm.
she had a story similar to yours, not as rough, but she was struggling to finish her higher education when I got to Seagate, and she ended up getting an MBA, if I remember right.
Yes, she does.
Uh,
Yep. Mhm.
my legacy is a trail of master's degrees, I guess,
Yeah.
in my wake.
Oh, there's a whole group of successful people, uh, Michael Mixon, what he went on to do, Pat McCarty,
Hmm.
he's a vice president or CEO or CFO now, even. I mean,
Yeah,
there's like a whole group of us. I mean,
yeah. Well, and I was only part of that. You guys had your whole support network, and there were good managers and executives at Seagate. There were some not so good ones, but there were some very good ones out there too. So
mhm,
it was. I mean, I was lucky to land at Seagate at a time when they were trying to create a culture of empowerment. They were shifting from a top-down management style to a more of a bottom-up. That's not really the right way to look at it, but more they were trying to push decision making down to the lowest level possible. And I'd always tell people, you're going to love working for me, or you're going to hate working for me. If you like a long leash, you're going to love working for me. If you like a manager that tells you what to do and when to do and how to do it, you're going to hate me, because I am the laziest manager you will ever work for. I want to tell you what to do. I want to tell you what you're not allowed to do to accomplish that. And then I want you to scurry off and do it, and then come report back. And call me if there's an obstacle that got in your way or that is getting in your way, and I will help you get through it. But otherwise, bring me back the finished product, and I'll pat you on the back, and we'll send you off on another one.
mhm,
That, I mean, that was the right time for me to land at Seagate, because I think, had I come several years earlier with the top-down style that existed, I would have chafed at the bit so hard, because I didn't know how to operate that way. So I think, and a lot of people at your level and between, Samantha's level and me, I think ended up being very good and successful employees, because they were there at that point in time, and they learned the importance of being self-motivated and making your own decisions.
mhm.
I was part of that, but I wasn't I was just a part of
Oh, you're so humble. That's that's part of it, which was, I've started to ask my guests to tell me, like their favorite song when they're feeling some self-doubt. And
it. Yeah,
and
my
you're like,
response was, that would imply that I ever had self-doubt.
self-doubt, right?
Yeah, no, but I do have an answer for that, because it's every so often I'd find a need for it just to pick me up when I'm feeling a little down. There's this great song from the album "Live You Get What You Play For" by REO Speedwagon,
Mhm.
Illinois rock band, and it's called "Keep Pushing On."
Mm.
And it's about keeping pushing on when things are tough. And it's a peppy little rock thing. that I just love the hell out of. I'm a big REO Speedwagon fan. Before they discovered schmooze rock,
Yeah.
back in the days where they did Ride in the Storm Out, 157 Riverside Avenue, all sorts of rollicking good time songs. But you can make more money playing soft rock. They discovered that, unfortunately.
I
But
remember
yeah,
you
keep
actually
pushing.
being a huge REO Speedwagon.
They're coming to town. I'm going to go see them.
Oh,
Maybe.
I think they were just down in Phoenix recently here. So,
Yeah,
I mean, that's a couple
they're
hours for me.
I think their keyboardist just announced he was retiring. He must be like 107 or something. But I mean, I got their second album when I was a sophomore in high school, I think. So, and they're still touring with Styx, which was a band in the town I grew up in.
hmm
But yeah, keep pushing on. It was always a good pick me up when I was feeling down.
hmm Yeah. Well, what would you, knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself, about your own like self-acceptance?
My own
If,
self-acceptance. I'm
yeah,
not
or
even
really
sure I know
seeing
what
your
that
own
means.
value, huh? Yeah.
I'm not even sure I know what that means.
Like being
I
at
mean,
peace with yourself, like
well,
your decisions, your choices, and you had to make choices when you were coming up and,
I
do
would
I
I would
travel or stay at my family or.
I would tell myself, don't be afraid to fail.
Mm,
I mean, we all experience that, and it starts when we're really young. We want to please our parents. We want to make our teachers happy. And we don't want to be seen as not successful. And even I think it's even worse today, is especially with social media and nonstop video stuff anymore. You can look like a fool pretty quickly and pretty easily, and that's okay. Uh, I would tell myself, don't be afraid to fail, because I think there were some things that I probably didn't do back when I was younger, um, because I was afraid of looking stupid, of not succeeding. And uh, I worked through that, I guess, because I turned out okay.
yeah,
But
mostly. Yeah. No.
yeah, mostly. But yeah, don't be afraid to fail. I think that's an important piece of advice for anybody of any age, but especially younger, because then you develop that attitude that it's okay to try new things and not succeed at them.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Well, I'm glad that you did that. Our paths crossed all those years ago and that you had such an impact. So thank you for joining me here, Pat. I've been so honored and blessed.
Oh, it's been
You
my
know,
pleasure, and I'm very humbled that you thought it was worth having me on to have this little chat. And I've really enjoyed it, Debbie.
If you enjoyed this Light Up Your Worth episode, be sure to share with a soulful friend who needs to hear this message. Thanks so much for listening and being part of the Light Up Your Worth community. My heart is full of gratitude for you. You are my inspiration to shine the light of spiritual, heart-centered women. Now go out there and shine your own light. Sending you sunshine.